Hey guys, I'm with Justin. He went undefeated at tonight's tournament. So what are you running?
SwordSoul Tenyi.
All right, awesome. So let's just jump right into it.
All right. So pretty standard. I'm playing 3 copies of Moyi, 2 Tai. Let's put those in a better position for you. So 3 copies of Moyi, 2 copies of Tai, 3 copies of Long Yuan, and then I'm playing 1 copy of Ecclesia, which is a little odd. Ecclesia is like a good kind of 1-card starter, but it loses really hard to Ash. So I cut it to 1 and kind of rely on the drawing Emergence, drawing Tai, kind of seeing my SwordSoul engine, and then along with the Tenyis a little bit more. And I haven't really had any consistency issues. One of these seems to be fine.
Okay.
Actually, just 666.
And then for the Tenyi package, 3 Ashina, 2 Vishuddha, 2 Adhara, and then 1 Chithana blue. Like 3 of this is like a pseudo starter if you draw it, so you want to play 3. This card's like, it's part of like doing the combos going first, but you only like really want to draw it going second. Adhara, 2 I think is fine. I was playing a 3rd. I cut it to 2 just because I would draw it and kind of nothing else. And then the blue, there's some combos you can do if you are dodging Valor with like Heavenly Circle, which you'll see later. This comes up to where it still lets you make your plays after you like tribute your Moyi to dodge and then 3 Emergence, standard, it's Rhoda.
Okay. So
Also,
basic rotor for the deck?
yeah, basic Rhoda for the deck. Also searches, like if you have a Synchro and like you need to search another worm, this can search any worm. This also searches Protoss, which is in the side deck. For this
Oh, nice.
1 Summit. I draw this card way more often than I should. It actually came up in my last match tonight, where this basically just won me the game.
Oh, nice. So why 1? I've seen people run it at 2, kind of going back and forth. What made you run it at 1?
You don't really want to draw it unless
Okay.
unless your opponent has like some high impact hand trap, in which case there's cards you would rather draw anyway.
Okay.
It's more something that you want to search as like an extender, or search as like a backup plan to help you play through Nib if your opponent has that.
Okay, fair enough.
The best card we saw was like the stealth frag.
3 Heavenly Circle. This is one of the best cards in this deck. If you open like this and a Tenyi and nothing else, you can like special a Tenyi from your hand, play this, sack the Tenyi, search search a Moyi if you have another worm in hand, or search Tai, and that just starts your whole play. Also, because it's a quick play, if your opponent has Valor and you like normal summon Moyi, reveal, and they try and Valor it, you can chain this, tribute the Moyi, search the blue Tenyi that I pointed out earlier.
Sathuna.
Yep, and so it'll still summon the token, and then because you don't control any effect monsters, you special this from your hand. This is level 4 non-tuner, the token's level 4 tuner. Makes Chi, makes whatever level 8 synchro you want, and you just keep playing the game.
Oh, nice. Okay.
It has another effect too, where if you control a non-effect monster, you can banish it from the graveyard to search a Tenyi, which comes up on follow-up, or like if you pitch it off of something like Twin Twister or something.
Okay.
2 Desires. I kind of like 3. I cut it to 2 so I could fit
Talents.
fit Talents in. Every time I saw this card, I almost always wished it was Desires, because it was like never live, or the situations where it was live in, I was either winning or losing anyway.
Okay.
It did come up once where my opponent used a Crystal Wing to negate my Baroness, so he had a 6k Crystal Wing, and like I did my play, stole the Crystal Wing, and killed him with it.
Oh, soul crushing right there. Oh, there you go, SwordSoul.
So it did come up, so it came in clutch. But other than that, I almost always wish it was Desires. 1 Called by the Grave. It's called by. Just kind of hitting like an Ash or a Valor. If this is like the 4th copy of Heavenly Dragon Circle.
So it's just mandatory at this point.
Yeah, it's just good.
Yeah, for a 3rd.
1 Blackout for the traps.
Oh, that's interesting. All right, you're gonna have to explain that.
So some people play this card at 2. For me, this is like a card that I don't want to open this card. I want to search it when I want it, or banish it off of Chisha when I want it. and like I don't really want to see this card apart from that.
Okay.
Because you're not really a trap deck. You're like you make some monsters, and then like if you're playing a back row matchup, you can search this, set it, so you can crack their back row with it. Or if when you're going second, a lot of times you end up banishing this off a Chi-Shao, so you can make another synchro play because this summons a token when you banish it.
Okay.
One Imperial Order. It's Imperial Order. I don't think I really need to say anything else. This turns off Mystic Mine. If you draw it, you basically win the game.
Oh yeah.
And then defensive cards, 3 Imperm, 3 Ash, and 3 Droll. I get some questions on Droll in the main deck. So like game 1, you normally don't know what you're playing against. So like I don't want to just drop a game 1 to bird up just because I lost a die roll, or drop a game 1 even to Flunderies just because I lost a die roll.
Okay.
I like having a card in my deck that can like surprise my opponent a little bit. And it's like decent against every other matchup. If like SwordSoul has to start with Emergence, this is good. Phantom Knight, it's okay. But like in the matchups where it's like really good, it's really good.
Okay, so what would be your floating spots for the deck when it comes to siding?
So when it comes to siding, that's actually a really good question. So if I'm playing in a Droll or matchup where Droll's irrelevant, Drolls go out, obviously. So a lot of times what's going to come out is usually a Desires, and then 1 Adhara when I know I'm going second, because you don't really want to see that card going second, and then like an Ashuna.
Okay.
Just because those aren't cards that you want to see. You don't want to open those cards when you're going second. You want to draw those cards as like a 6th card.
Okay.
You want to open hand traps or cards that actually help you break a board.
Gotcha.
Which brings me to the side deck. So 3 Nibiru. I think this card's pretty standard at this point. Most decks can kind of play through it or around it fairly well, but it's also just makes your opponent, just because you have it, your opponent has to respect it. The one of Protoss. I have it in the side deck because I don't really like it game 1, because like, again, the format's so diverse. If you're like summoning this game 1, you have to blind call it.
Okay.
And like blind calling dark is like the most generic, and it's effective because you always have a dark because it's a dark. But like if you summon this and you call dark against birds, they're like, okay, cute, and then they'll just play right into your board.
So have you ever seen an instance where it's like you needed it, you couldn't get it, or you needed it, got it, and then just ended up not using it?
No, so like whenever, like that's in the side deck so that I can dig it out whenever I want it, and then it's not in the main deck, so I'm not like drawing it when I don't want to see it, or mainly drawing it when I don't want to see it. It's just kind of unnecessary in the main deck.
Okay, fair enough.
And I also want to make room for other cards in the main. One of Twin Twister, which is my German misprint there, and then 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. I kind of just like, this is just a bomb card against back row decks, and I kind of treat this as like a second copy of Duster. Obviously it's not quite as impactful, but it gets rid of 2 cards, and so it kind of does the same thing against decks where you may not necessarily want evenly, or maybe you even just want extra copies of back row removal. And then like the 1 red reboot, also for back row decks. If you draw this, you win the game. And then, so 3 copies of Chalice. I moved this over to the side deck just because, like against Bird Up, it's not so great because the things that are the biggest threat to your deck, the Onsum Blue and the Apex Avian, you can't target them if they make the whole board anyway. So this doesn't really do you any good in a game 1 scenario, and then like the rest of your hand traps should be good enough in a game 1 scenario. Game 2 and 3, I'll usually bring these in if I'm playing against like another combo deck for the mirror match. And then I also bring these in going first against, if I think my opponent might be siding Token Collector, I'll take my Imperms out and put these in, because they do the same thing as Imperm going when you're going first, except you can also activate them from your hand. If your opponent has Token Collector, you can turn it off with this and keep playing.
So why that over Droplet?
You can't afford the discard in this deck, honestly.
Okay.
You want to keep the cards in your hand. So Droplet is always going to be a -1 at at the very least, because you always have to send something or discard something to pay the cost for it.
Correct.
This just trades, and sometimes that's all you need is you just need to trade a negate, and then kill your opponent or whatever.
Okay.
And then 2 copies of any spell. These are just kind of like my second and third copy of Order for when I go first. I'll usually bring in like the Protos, sometimes these, and then these 2. Just it's extra stuff you can draw that kind of pushes that I win button a little bit more, as opposed to just relying on your board by itself.
Fair enough.
And the extra deck. Nice pretty token. Shout out to Jonathan Bosworth, local guy, for making these. We got Long Yuan, Tenyi, and Moyi.
Nice.
So we play 3 Monk. I think this is kind of mandatory at this point, just because if you're in a game where you're kind of grinding with your opponent a little bit, the third one is almost always going to come up, just because it gives you something that you can go into off of a Tenyi in hand, and then it turns on all the Tenyis that are in your graveyard. Some people don't respect the third Monk, and so they just don't prepare for it when they pass turn to you, and you just make it and win the game. And then the 1 Shaman, it gives you a way to kind of extend, especially like if you get nibbed. You can make this off of your Tenyis from your graveyard, because they give you a nib token that counts as your non-effect monster, and then you can kind of play off of your Tenyis. Make this and like reborn a Chi Shao or something that's an interruption for your opponent.
Okay.
1 Ruddy Rose. This card doesn't come up very often for me, but I think it's just you kind of have to play it just because of those niche scenarios against like Phantom Knight, Drytron if it comes up, decks that play out of the graveyard. You make this and then they just don't have any follow-up after that, because they're usually playing out of their graveyard, and this just like blows them out. Comes up against Striker too, because if they have like DPE and Ray, you can make this, and same thing, is it solves all of the problems.
You hear that, people? It solves the problems.
1 Changying. This guy's pretty good. This is what you make after you do your, if you do like your Tenyi combo first, because it locks you into summoning worm monsters. This is what you make instead of Baroness. He gets really big, he makes your opponent's guys really small, and then the non-targeting banish is also really good, because again, this can solve the DPE problem because it hits your opponent's graveyard.
Okay. Yep.
Baroness, this card's probably the best card in the extra deck. This is like your go-to if you're not locked into worms. You make this, it negates, it destroys, and it is like guaranteed follow-up on your next turn. This card's just really good. Chow Fang and 2 Baxia. So these go
Spicy.
This is part of your Tenyi combo. So like if you open like 2 Tenyis in a starter, basically you can do this where you make the Baxia, you pop a Monk to bring back the Adhara, and then Baxia and Adhara make the Chow Fang. It turns off nib, so like your opponent has to nib you before you make it. It also turns off like Valor and Gamma. And then against decks that have light monsters, and especially like a lot of light monsters, like if you're playing against Drytron or something, this is just the win button. And then Baxi is also just really good because it shuffles stuff back. If you make it with Tenyi, you're going to shuffle 2, and then it can pop itself or something else on your board, reborn something, and then you just like get to keep playing the game.
Oof, that extension.
Yeah, Baxi is like low-key one of the best cards in this extra deck. 2 copies of Chi Shao. Usually you only have to make 1 of these in a game when you go first. The second one comes up sometimes if you need to like put up another interruption to pass back to your opponent, or if you need to like search out another combo piece to just keep playing the game. It's just good. It's like Stratos and Effect Veiler and just so many good cards all in one. 1 Dragite. This card's really good. It's just a spell negate if you can make it up off of if you have like Moyi or the blue Tenyi in the grave.
Okay.
And then it has another effect that comes up. My opponent actually did this to me in my last match today because it was a mirror match. If you have post side, if you have the Nibiru's in the main deck, or like if you have the Nibiru's in the side deck, its effect is to excavate 5 cards, and for every rock monster, you non-targeting just bounce something from your opponent's field.
Okay.
So
That's
Nibiru,
awesome.
Nibiru is a rock monster, so it fulfills a requirement. My opponent made this because it was his only play, because I had it was a mirror match and I had the Chao Fang up with Chang'ing, so he made this and revealed 3 Nibirus off of this thing.
Oh, profound sadness.
I still won the game, but that was the first time I'd ever seen that happen. But so that effect does kind of come up. It's also just a 3K beater and spell and trap negate. 1 Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. This is kind of the other level 8 you can make if you're worm locked and can't make this. When your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish it, which is good against some decks. It's actually really good against Bird Up, because if they have to like start with like Turquoise or something, you just banish it, and then they have to commit to a normal summon to actually play. Its other effect too comes up sometimes. If it attacks and destroys something by battle, it gains that monster's attack, and then it can attack again on a monster.
Oh, okay.
But you can clear a board very easily with like this and Baroness. And then the one spicy card here, White Aura Whale.
Ooh, yeah.
So this is kind of like another version of this card. The main reason I play this is to respect the Crooked Cook decks, the water control,
Gotcha.
the decks that are playing Astral Kribo.
This one does, you banish a water from the deck and then it gets to reborn itself, right?
So it has
Or from the graveyard?
it has the reborn effect that doesn't really come up in this deck. Because if it only really comes up when it's destroyed, you can banish a water monster and special summon it as a tuner. What is really relevant about this card is it can swing twice on monsters, and it does piercing. So like if they're trying to wall you with Crooked Cook, they'll usually summon it in defense, and it has 200 defense. This has 2,800 attack, so you're getting in for 2,600 twice.
Oof.
So that's quite a bit of damage, and then that combined with the Long Yuan burn puts your opponent on a really tight clock, to where they have to try to play the game, or they have to be able to out this, or they have to be able to like out this and not just get burned out by Long Yuan.
Yeah, that's a tough play to get over.
Yeah,
That's a nice card though.
Yeah. So this is it. It's kind of niche, but like the swing twice effect comes up against other decks too.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any shout outs you want to give?
You know, a lot of my friends help me with my deck building. Kevin, he's over there, busy working.
Is that Mr. Kevin Yim? Oh, snap.
Kevin Yim. Tyler Wooten, Angel Sixto, a lot of the guys that help me with my deck building.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and congratulations tonight.
Thank you.